Hello, this is Josh of Daleks Aren't Robots. I watched the new Davies era of Doctor Who. A friend of mine did. We had thoughts. We recorded the thoughts. I edited the thoughts. And now we're presenting the thoughts. Hope you like it. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Daleks Aren't Robots. I am Josh. I am a co-creator and co-host of the regular show, which has been on hiatus for various life reasons. But this is an attempt to try and get things back on. Hopefully, the regular podcast will be back in 2024. But today, I'm going to be talking about the recent specials that have hit both the BBC and Disney Plus, and I will be talking with a new friend, Samuel. Say hi, Sam.
Hi, Sam. Hey,
Weirdly enough, no one else has made that joke on the podcast.
it's so
I
easy.
think you're the first.
Before we get into it, should I say who I am and my history with the show?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
For those of the podcast, hi, my name's Sam. You've heard my sister on the podcast before, Alana. She was on the End of the World, I think it was.
Yeah, she covered the End of the World episode with us.
And me and Josh have known each other for a couple of years now, and I listen to the podcast, big fan.
Oh, thank you.
As for my history with Doctor Who, so to keep it brief, when I got into college, there was this YouTuber I watched named Welshie. He had a big thing where he was covering all the Saw movies, but he also put out these 3 videos, the top 10 favorite moments of the 9th, 10th, and 11th Doctor as of his first season. And watching those got me into the like, you know what? I should give this a try. I've heard about Doctor Who. I've watched other reviews. At the time, the first 4 seasons of specials were on Netflix, so I watched those and I really liked them. I fell off about halfway through the 7th season. It was The Angels Take Manhattan.
Yeah.
For those who didn't. But I still like the show. I've been meaning to get back into it, and I talk with Josh about it a lot. For their heads up, I've only really watched the modern show, and Matt Smith is my favorite.
I like Matt Smith. Matt Smith brings a lot of classic energy back to New Who.
Yeah, if only he was here.
Which I attribute pretty much entirely to the actor, because Moffat... Well, we'll talk about Moffat another day.
Moffat might come up a bit here, because I have some thoughts.
Fair enough.
I do have recaps for each, so if you want, I could get started.
Yeah, very quickly, how would you describe the plots of these 3 specials?
Do you want me to do all 3, or just the first one to start off?
If we're going one by one, then I'd say just the first one, but if you want to start with what has changed, then we might as well do all 3 now.
Let's just do one by one, because I think that'll help us stay focused.
That's a good idea. So let's start with the first one, the Star Beast. What happens in the Star Beast, Sam?
First things first, David Tennant's sized elephant in the room. David Tennant's back as the 14th Doctor. We'll get into it. Mm-hmm. There's a narration, and he's telling the story of what happens with him as back when he was the 10th Doctor, specifically about what happened to his companion, Donna Noble. We cut to Donna and what her life is like now. She's happily married. She's still living with her mom, and she has a daughter named Rose. And the Doctor is just thinking about her, and he basically just lands outside of where she's working.
Yeah.
And then a spaceship crashes, and Donna just completely misses it. It's very funny. It's a running joke that Donna is just very oblivious to everything going on at first. The Doctor is trying to figure out what's going on, so he goes to the ship and he finds units there. He's figuring stuff out, and meanwhile, there's we cut back to Donna and her family, and Rose comes home, and they have this very E.T. moment where Rose finds this cute little alien named Beep the Meep.
Yes, Beep the Meep.
He's hiding from people who are hunting him.
They're hiding from people who are hunting them. They point out that Beep the Meep doesn't really have a gender.
Yes. I'll try to speed this up a little bit because we do have 3 specials to go through.
Yeah, yep.
The Doctor goes to check on Donna and finds all this stuff out, and the unit agents actually get mind controlled or something, and it becomes this big 3-way firefight between the mind controlled units, these other alien groups, and the Doctor's group trying to protect Beat the Meep. Eventually it comes to light that, yeah, these people are trying to hunt Beat the Meep because are we allowed to cuss on here?
Yeah, no, you can say fuck.
Oh yeah, he's a fucking monster. Like, his race was basically altered by a psychedelic sun, and he's the last of their serial killer race. He's trying to escape the planet on his ship that involves stabbing the ground, which will make it explode.
Yep.
and they try to stop the launch because obviously this will kill like I think they say 9 million people living in London.
Yeah, the for some reason stabbing the Earth will blow up London.
So the Doctor goes to stop the ship's launch, but he gets cut off, and he has to reactivate the Doctor Donna, which was the thing that he had to erase at the end of their storyline in season 4.
Yeah, pardon me,
Yeah,
at the end of Journey's End.
correct. Yeah. The Doctor and the Doctor Donna, as they describe her, work together, and then she runs out of time and dies because it was basically going to overload her brain and kill her. But
Yep.
then we find out that Rose's daughter inherited some of the Dr. Donna-ness when
Uh,
she was born.
Donna's daughter Rose, not
Yes, I'm
Rose's
sorry.
daughter.
Yeah, apologies.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
we but Rose inherited some of the meta crisis, as they call it, and
Mm-hmm.
thus they're able to solve the problem, get Beep arrested, and they get the Doctor stuff, the Time Lord stuff out of them in a way that I think we'll talk about.
Yes, yes, we will. I have
And
words.
and then the episode ends with them all hanging out in front of the TARDIS. We get to see the new TARDIS. It looks very nice. I also want to talk about that.
Mm.
And they're like, we're gonna go just visit Wilf because Wilf's still alive, and I'm very happy. And
Yes.
Donna spills coffee on the module, and they get blasted off into space. And that's the Star Beast.
Yep, that's the first special. Already a lot.
So I think we should get the big thing out of the way first. There's a couple
Um,
of big things actually, but I was gonna say we should talk about David Tennant.
yeah, okay. So at the end of Jodie Whittaker's regeneration, she regenerated into David Tennant, complete with her clothes changing, which
Mm.
incidentally is never given an in-canon reason why that happens.
First time it's ever happened too, right?
Yeah, no, the clothes have never changed before.
I'm going to try to stay in story and just say the fact that he's David Tennant again is brought up. And as I was watching these specials, there was one question going through my head that I was keeping in mind. Was this worth bringing David Tennant back as the new Doctor?
Yeah, if that's the first question we're answering, I think in terms of plot expediency, it has some merit. In terms of overall thematic weight, I don't think it has much to offer.
I will say when we get to the third episode, I will talk about this more, but I think it would have worked if they hadn't done what they do in the third episode. And I have thoughts about that too, but we'll get into it. But
Uh,
let's focus on this episode for
yeah,
now.
we're focusing on just the Star Beast for now.
I was just going to say the first thing I want to say right off the bat, and this was my first note, as someone who's fallen off the show, regardless of my thoughts at the end of these specials, it is nice to watch Doctor Who again as someone who fell off the show around series 7.
We're gonna get into like the full description now, but I just want to give like a ranking right now. In my opinion, Wild Blue Yonder, top tier, easily my favorite of the three. The Giggle, the final one, bottom tier, have a lot of problems, a lot to say, and the Star Beast kind of falls in the middle for me. It's
Yes.
kind of a mix of good and bad.
Agreed. Oh, there's one thing I want to cover because we've talked about this off screen, but I think it would be cool to talk about on screen.
Yeah.
You told me about this. This is partially an adaptation.
Yes. So to really condense a lot, Beep the Meep first premiered in Doctor Who magazine as part of the Marvel Comics run. He appeared in the 1980s episode The Star Beast, and in fact, the original creative team of that comic is given credit in the special. I'm very thankful to Russell for that. This whole setup of Beep the Meep is discovered by two Earth children who are like, oh, this is a cute alien that we should befriend. Turns out he's evil, tries to blow up the world, is ultimately stopped by the Doctor. All of that is taken pretty much verbatim from the comic. So it's a very direct adaptation in that sense.
And I'll say those parts, I think we agree, are generally the stronger half.
They're where I feel like the writing is the best, which does not say much about Russell T Davies, unfortunately.
I'll get into this in a second, but I will say, like, there's a lot of comedy in this first episode.
There
And
is.
I think one of the funniest parts is when Beat the Meat finally drops the facade. It's just like, oh, for God's sake. It's really funny because he has like these he looks like a furry Yoda, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he drops the facade, his eyes become slits, and he has his teeth just come out all fang, and he's just like, I am Beep the Meep, and I am the meepiest of the beeps, or whatever.
He is like I am the beep of all meeps,
Yeah.
which appears to be like I am the best of the meeps. Incidentally, little bit of praise. I know we're jumping ahead. I was shocked to find out that Beep the Meep was almost entirely done practically.
Yeah, and he looked good. There's that shot where he's with all the plushies, and I'm like, yeah, those, especially considering what we'll talk about in the next two episodes, it was nice to see these practicals.
Yeah, the next two are definitely a lot more CGI heavy, but Beep the Meep looks great.
So I have some questions about this episode because we have talked about Doctor Who on and off camera. So
Actually, before we get into that, I do want to talk a bit about David Tennant as the Doctor because something that I think is both a pro and a con, at least here, is David Tennant's 14th Doctor is really similar to the David Tennant's 10th Doctor.
and that was something I had talked about because you had watched these episodes before me. And
Yes.
my big question was David Tennant is listed as the 14th Doctor in this, except in some subtitles where they still list him as the 10th Doctor, which was funny.
Nah.
But I was hoping, okay, yeah, he looks like David Tennant, but maybe he acts completely different. And I think the only real difference is that he seems a bit emotionally all over the place in these episodes. There's times where he's very like angry, and then he'll be like, "Oh, it's me again." I don't remember David Tennant being exactly that. He'd be very angry or he'd be very happy. He wouldn't really bounce us back and forth like this.
That is true. This I think is especially looked at in Wild Blue Yonder, which we'll talk about
Mm-hmm.
later on. The emotional fluctuation, for one thing, I really like it because it's put on that this is partially a result of The Flux, which was a series-long arc that Chibnall did during the Jodie Whittaker era. So, yep, Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall, all of that's still canon. You gotta accept it. Yep.
I was going to say, and for whatever else we're going to say about Russell T Davies, the writer and new head showrunner, he did not throw anything away.
No, he was very respectful to both Moffat's run and Chibnall's run, which, given that some head writers have not been that respectful to previous showrunners, I'm very thankful for.
But getting back to Tennant, I'll say his portrayal, he's still great. Like, David Tennant's still a fantastic actor.
Yes.
And it was great seeing him and Catherine Tate on screen together as the Doctor and Donna. Like, the fact they fixed what they did to Donna is almost worth it.
Yes. I do want to cover Donna in a bit more detail, but the one thing I want to say, it's really great seeing David Tennant get to be David Tennant all over the special, and he's still got it, and it's still a lot of fun. But I feel like it soaks this special and the later specials in so much nostalgia that because this is meant to be a jumping off point for the next era of Doctor Who, I feel like it works against itself.
And this was actually something I was going to bring up later, but I'll say it now. These feel like episodes that could have been in season 4. Especially, I might be a little more positive on the giggle, but that feels very season 1 through 4 of Doctor Who, especially season 3. I
Yeah.
we'll get there, but
Neil Patrick Harris, why?
I have thoughts, but like each of these episodes, he kind of framed them in the style of a season. Like Star Beast feels like a season opener, Wild Blue Yonder feels like a mid-season episode, and The Giggle does feel like a season finale.
It does, and it also feels at least a little bit like sort of a lost closer to his own era. So maybe that's all this is. Davies is closing the door on his era so he can start with new stuff.
And it's not the end of time.
We don't have time for the end of time. So we've already brought up Donna, so I want to talk a bit about Catherine Tate in this. For those who don't know, Donna Noble, at the end of season 4, gets her memory erased. Her character arc is basically undone through the memory erasure, which I and a lot of other Donna Noble fans were very pissed off about. So these specials, in a big way, definitely feel like a fix for that. Yeah, they feel like an apology.
Shout out to Alana, who is one of the biggest Donna fans we know.
The one thing I will say with this special in regards to Donna, first of all, minor subplot that really ticked me off is they established this thing where Donna Noble gave away all the money that she got at the end of time. A big subplot of this is the doctor and everyone around Donna is like, why would she give away all of her money? It's so out of character. And I'm like, because she wanted to be like the doctor. That is very obvious. I don't understand why this was treated as a big mystery.
I feel like it wasn't treated as a mystery so much. It's something they hint throughout the entire story. It becomes more and more obvious at the closer we get to the return of Dr. Donna, is that even if you erase all of her memories of her experiences, the Doctor still left an impact on her. It's a very superhero thing. Like, the hero teaches you how to be a better person.
The only other thing I really want to say about Catherine Tate in this is that of the three specials, I feel like Donna is at her weakest here, in
Mm.
large part because Catherine Tate is not allowed to go full Donna because she's still in the memory wipe phase.
That said, the moment she gets her memories back and she's like, I gave away 166 million pounds because of you.
That was great. Also, another thing that I do think holds Donna back here is she does not have many people to work off of in this episode. Her best moments have always been her working off of David Tennant, and this episode does a lot to keep them separate for most of
Yeah.
it.
And it helps that, like, this is a known thing. David Tennant and Catherine Tate are, like, best friends off camera. We're on the topic of Dawn. I feel like we should talk about Rose.
Okay, first thing that we need to bring up. I said back when Daleks Aren't Robots covered the end of the world, one of the things I mentioned was that the villain Cassandra, if she was trans, which was a discussion,
Mm-hmm.
then she would have been the only trans character to have appeared in the actual Doctor Who show. 18 years later, that is no longer the case. Rose is a trans character. She is, I think, a non-binary character.
There's a non-binary conversation, but they say her mostly. I think it's a they-her situation.
Okay, so she's like on the she-they spectrum, whatever. And it's great that we have a character who is a human, not an alien, so we can address it on Earth terms. It's great that we have a character that we're meant to empathize with as a trans person. That's great for representation. Rose's entire personality is that she is trans.
I think saying that she has a personality is even stretching it.
She is trans and she makes plushies. Those are the only things we know about Rose by the end of not just this special, but all three. That she
And we
has nothing.
and speaking of the plushies, that we find out is part of the connection to she inherited some of the Doctor's memory stuff, because the plushies are all based off of monsters that the Doctor and Donna encountered during their run. And I think maybe now we should talk about how Donna and Rose get rid of the Time Lordness.
Yeah. So
Mm.
the initial result of she passed along her Dr. Donna memories, Metacrisis to her daughter, that made sense to me.
Yeah.
There's a biological aspect to it. It can be passed on. I feel like we could have ended it there as it's now safe because we have shared it. And it would have been a nice little moment, a connection between a mother and a daughter. They don't stop there.
Nope.
Eventually the Doctor is like, oh, but it's going to keep growing and overtake you. And the two of them turn to the Doctor, who has just been a woman, basically like, as a male presenting Time Lord, you never would have thought of this. We can just give it up. And they just disperse the meta crisis-ness and oh dear God, the fucking
Okay, I'm gonna take over for a second. Like, Davies is obviously trying to correct mistakes he made in his original run. He's had some bad presentation, especially of certain types of people, namely LGBT. And Rose is clearly an honest, legitimate attempt to be more positive. But then this whole thing is like, so you're kind of just being sexist the other way now, though.
I feel like he's trying to be empowering, and it's just coming across as, at best, cringe, at worst, just like the Moffat style of sexism, where it's like women are beautiful and amazing and do all this stuff. I don't like it.
But I think the way they could have done this is not that they're women, it's that they're human. You make it so that, like, yeah, you're a Time Lord, so you don't know how to give this up, but we are humans and we make sacrifices all the time, or something like, we don't want to give up who we are, we want to be our real selves. When Rose gives up the Time Lord stuff, she's like, I'm really me, and I'm like, this feels like it's supposed to be a big moment, and that might have worked a little better.
That would have worked. I will confess I did not rewatch these before we came in to record this.
I watched them last night.
Yeah, somehow there's some offhand bit of dialogue about how Rose being non-binary is also why she can absorb the metacrisis, which
Yes, because she's closer to Time Lords because they can be different things.
that's bullshit, but okay, whatever. I don't want to go too far into the weeds here because I am cisgender and I don't know shit.
Same here.
But it seems to me like they're trying to make an argument of gender on a biological level equating to Time Lords, which there's some strange attempt at empowerment here that feels disconnected from like what it's actually talking about.
Yeah. Getting off that, I wanted to talk about some other general things. Each of these episodes feel like they are setting up for Davy's eventual run in little ways.
Yes.
Beat the Meat mentions someone he listened to, and at first I thought this was referencing the villain of the last episode, but it doesn't seem to be that. There's a thing
No.
in episode 2, and then episode 3 heavily hints at something near the end. I think we'll have to talk about as well, the tooth.
Yes, yes, we'll talk about the tooth.
I know, I'm sorry. Anything else we really want to talk about in this episode?
I will talk a bit about Unit, who are not much of an entity in this episode. We get a new science officer
The
who is in a wheelchair.
Shirley Ann Bingham. She is the scientific officer number 57. They bond over the fact that the doctor was the first, back when he was the third doctor.
Yes. Yeah, she's fine. She's not given much to do, at least not here.
This was one of the questions I had, actually.
Yeah.
I have not watched Fluff. We were talking about while it was on, and you implied that Unit basically got Winter Soldiered. Did we undo that?
So here's the thing. Flux adds a lot to Doctor Who continuity. You know what? I'm not going to get too far into it because
Yeah.
we're not reviewing Flux, but they imply that Unit was partially founded by this antagonistic organization to do stuff in the future that would allow for the destruction of planets and all the stuff going on in Flux. But they also do imply that like large chunks of Unit were very much sequestered away from that and were like actually running Unit as a cell. So like the
Mm-hmm.
Brigadier they imply and his section of Unit were just true believers in the mission.
Okay. Because when it was first happening in Flux, I remember you were really worried that, like, again, our comparison was Captain America the Winter Soldier, where Hydra was basically had infiltrated all of S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of thing.
I was concerned about that. Chibnall seems to have like avoided doing anything that drastic, which I
Yeah.
appreciate.
I don't know why, but whenever I saw the Unit soldiers, I thought of Spaceballs.
This is easily the most like meathead gun happy we've seen Unit in quite some time.
I was just talking about the uniforms. Like, I hadn't seen Spaceballs in a while, but just think about the fact that the helmets were all big and round, and they had like the very black rounded armor. I'm like, hell, screwed. But Unit was fine. They got mind
Yeah.
controlled, and people died, unfortunately.
One thing that I want to say before we move on is just Beep the Meep is great. It's
Oh, yeah.
great to see them in the show. They're simultaneously a very funny villain, but also a very intimidating villain.
Yeah. And actually, what I was going to say actually involves that, because I was talking about how things reminded me of things in this episode. There was the bug-like aliens, the Routh Warriors, I believe they were called.
Yes, they're also from the comic, incidentally.
Yeah. So when I saw them, they look like the parademons from DC Comics, like that, like work for Darkseid.
Well, the comic was drawn by Dave Gibbons, a DC artist, so maybe he was influenced by that.
Yeah.
Oh, just one more quick thing.
Yeah.
Apparently undoing the earth poking
Oh,
also
yeah.
somehow causes the creases that were forming in asphalt and stone to just reseal up somehow.
One more Spaceballs joke. They went from suck to blow.
Yes, yes, they did. Obviously, that's, just Doctor Who being Doctor Who, but that's silly. That's very silly.
Yeah. All right.
Are we ready to talk about Wild Blue Yonder?
Yes. Oh, there is one thing and this goes along with all three. I like the new intro sequence.
I like it okay. One thing
It's a
I will
lot.
say is I'm not a huge fan of Murray Gold.
I'm used to it because, again, like in my head, since I fell off basically when they left, I'm like, oh yeah, this sounds like Doctor Who to me.
It does. More than anything, I don't like how it's mixed
Okay.
because the score will drown out everything so much of the time.
With that, I think we'll go into Wild Blue Yonder.
Okay?
It's following up on Donna spilling coffee on the new TARDIS. By the way, the TARDIS can make coffee now. What a nice lady. And they crash land into the tree that Isaac Newton is discovering gravity on.
Yep.
And they say the word gravity. He can't remember it, so he instead says mavity, which is something that carries over through the rest of the episode.
Yes, it does.
That was funny. And then the TARDIS eventually lands in what appears to be a spaceship while playing the song Wild Blue Yonder, which is like, I believe, a British military march song, kind of, or a Navy. I think it's an Air Force song.
It's an American Air Force song in that fact, I think.
Well, they're talking about how they learned to sing it in school, and they're in Britain.
Yeah, but I think it's still an American song.
The TARDIS is like slammed into a wall, and when they try to open it, it shoots out flames like it's in hell. Eventually, the Doctor is able to reset the TARDIS into repair mode by sticking the sonic screwdriver in there, because the sonic screwdriver can do many things in these specials, including force fields, which is something I was going to bring up. Moving
Yeah,
on.
we didn't even talk about the fact that the screwdriver can apparently make force fields now.
Yeah, but whatever. We'll move on. So while the TARDIS is in repair mode, they're like, "All right, we're going to chill," and then the TARDIS flies away.
Now,
And
to be fair, this is actually something that is part of Doctor Who canon. This idea that the TARDIS will fly off if it's in a dangerous situation or needs to repair itself.
okay, was that HADS thing also established, or is that new? The system of it returning it when there's no danger.
I don't think it was when there was no danger. I think it's when the TARDIS was capable again.
But
But yeah, this is basically building off of past Doctor Who lore.
okay, I was going to ask about that because I have certain sections of my notes I just call Josh question mark exclamation point. So Donna decides, oh, we have to get rid of the problem. Let's go kick its ass.
All right, so they go to explore the ship. They discover the ship is pretty much empty. They discover two big things. First, that the ship has flown apparently to the edge of the known universe.
Mm.
And two, that the ship has been boarded by two beings from the edge of the known universe, who are these
Beyond the
really.
edge.
I'm sorry?
They were from beyond the edge of the universe, I think was
Yes,
the
beyond.
establishment.
They are described as the not things from the dark. They have boarded and are slowly turning themselves into duplicates of the Doctor and Donna so that they can basically go back to Earth and take over. It's eventually revealed that the captain of the ship, before killing herself, set the ship to self-destruct mode. The Doctor and Donna are able to escape, but only after the Doctor fucks up and takes the
Mm-hmm.
wrong Donna first by accident. And that's basically Wild Blue Yonder. It's a simple monster on a ship storyline.
I'm going to do a compliment and then a negative.
Okay.
Davies can be surprisingly good at horror. Like, the thing this reminds me the most of is Midnight
Yeah.
with the lady who's mirroring the Doctor. And I'm like, in that way, it's really effective. But my biggest negative about this episode, because I think we both agree this is the best of the three.
Yes.
This is the worst CG of all three of them. This episode's ugly.
It is.
There's a lot of green screen sets, and the monsters are okay, but it's just the sets look terrible.
The sets are awful. The sets are clearly all green screened, which I get why the sets are pretty much all green screen because we're not going to use these sets ever again.
And also, you have to do that thing where they shift around all the time.
True. The monsters, when they're done practically, even though it doesn't look real, it does look eerie in a way that the CGI just kind of ruins when they go to it. The way the monsters work is they're copying their bodies, but they don't really know how they work. So their arms will be too long or they'll bend in the wrong way.
My arms are too long is basically the signature line of this episode.
Yes, it is. We are back to repeating a quote until it is scary.
Yeah.
One of New Who's favorite things.
But yeah, to sandwich this with another compliment, there's a moment where the Doctor and Donna are separated and they're talking to who they think are the Doctor and Donna, but are the duplicates. And it gets really introspective for both of them. And I think that is the best part of the episode, where the Doctor is still reeling from what happened in Flux.
Yes, he is.
He even shouts, I know it's not my fault, but still.
The Doctor being guilt-ridden has pretty much always been a thing in New Who.
Yeah.
Largely because of the Time War. But the thing that Flux and the Timeless Child, the things that this special is playing on very specifically, is that they aren't just like destruction happened and the Doctor blames themselves. It was also the Doctor discovering things about their beginning and their identity that they previously did not know, and they clearly have not recovered from it.
And that is something I'm going to get into when we get into the third episode, because I think it is important to what happens in episode 3.
Something I also want to talk about with the Doctor here is that this is probably the most off model we get with the 14th Doctor in comparison to the 10th Doctor. Like, this is the most different because this Doctor fucks up a lot in this special.
Yeah, I actually like that the Doctor messes up on this because, like, especially back in the Davies era, a lot of modern Who is the Doctor is magical, awesome, ultimate fellow. He fucks up with this a lot.
Yeah, and not just taking the wrong Donna at the end. He separates them when Donna says they should stay together, which is a big fuck up. He can't tell when he's being manipulated by the evil Donna.
He starts thinking when he knows that's what's going to help them.
Yeah, his personality is used against him in a way that felt very new to Doctor Who, but also that I thought was going to relate in the third special to like why he is this doctor again. Like maybe
Yeah.
there's something going on there. That doesn't happen, but it was a cool thought when I had it.
Yeah. Again, each of these specials also feels like they're setting up stuff for Davy's run, and it feels like maybe the not things from the dark. I know very little aside from the general idea of what happened to the Timeless Child, but they seem to actually remember even stuff that the Doctor doesn't remember from back then.
I'm not sure if they remember stuff the doctor doesn't remember, but they remember the doctor learning about it.
And
Like
also,
there's
sorry,
a
go ahead.
bit where he says, "I'm from Gallifrey," and Donna goes, "But that's not true, is it?" The
Mhm.
not Donna says
Yep,
that. That's
sorry.
a reference to the Timeless Children, where it's revealed that the doctor actually didn't originate on Gallifrey. He's from somewhere else, another dimension of sorts, although we don't know what the dimension is like, and brought a lot of Time Lordiness to the Time Lords.
Yeah. The way they work around that in the story is like, why would Donna know that? I don't know if this is true or not. This is the weird part. They imply that when Donna became the Dr. Donna again, they saw what happened after their adventures.
In the first special, they seem to imply that Donna knows things that did happen after, like that he was a woman.
Mm.
I guess somehow that works, but it doesn't really come to anything.
I can excuse that because of the Time Lords are generally telepathic, like telekinetic to some extent. I can just imagine because the Doctor and Donna are connected like that via the Doctor Donna stuff, she kind of just absorbed some of that when she became her again.
Yeah, I can accept it. It's just it feels weirdly like a setup with no punchline. It feels
Yeah,
like we
again,
spend a
it's
lot of time building it up, but we never use it.
because I also was like, is this part of the manipulation? Because these two not things are very manipulative, and
Yes,
they're
they
like
are.
the not things from the dark are great. I think these were an awesome villain.
Incidentally, something that I feel David Tennant doesn't get enough credit for, when he wants to be, he can be scary as fuck.
Yeah, when he just has this freak out in the hallway, the Doctor is not okay.
No, he is not. No, he is not.
And that again, that's something we're going to get into in the next episode. But this episode has more of that emotional all over the place. I don't want to use the word bipolar, but he is very emotionally all over the place in these episodes, and it happens in the very beginning and throughout this a lot.
The reading I have, honestly, is PTSD, or that he has buried trauma that he is just not dealing with, and it's building and burgeoning on him.
Which, to be fair, is something David Tennant has experience with from his 10th Doctor era, which was still recovering from the Time War. This is now more
True.
everything and especially the Flux. Because, okay, the implication from what he says is half the universe got destroyed by the Flux.
So, the Flux. Again, I don't want to go too far into this, both because this isn't a review of the Flux, but also because it's been a while since I've seen it, and frankly, a lot happens in Flux. It was a
Okay.
six-part thing. It was like an entire season. But basically, these bad guys are like destroying the universe, and so the Flux is like this wave rushing through, and it takes a lot of planets out
Ah,
with it.
okay. That makes sense then.
That's what that's in reference to. A bunch of these planets
I,
just got wiped by the Flux.
I also just wanted to say I had a theory when we saw the blackness, and I want to know if you had the same idea, considering this was Davies. Before they explained that this is the edge of the universe, I thought the TARDIS had brought them to the end of time, like in season three.
Mm.
Like, when they met the old man master with Martha, and we there were no stars in the sky because they had all gone out by that time in the universe. I thought this was like one of those ships that they had talked about.
That would have been an interesting poll, but I'm kind of glad they didn't do that. I feel like
Agreed.
this was
Like,
stronger.
I do like the idea that like there is an edge of the universe, but there is these things outside there that don't work on the same laws as like of the universe.
Another reason that I like that, and I think that's actually a really good concept to introduce going into episode three, because there were a lot of like bigger than everything villains in Classic Who that this is kind
Mhm.
of subtly implying are still out there at the edges of Doctor Who space.
It plays with like Eldridgean, like Cthulhu-y kind of feelings of like the
Yeah.
things in the dark that you can't understand, hence their name, the not things from the dark.
Yeah, Doctor Who loves playing around with that, incidentally. So I'm very
Yeah.
excited to see where they go with that. I do want to talk a bit
I had
about Donna, who I don't think we've touched
oh
on at all in the discussion of
we
this
talked about her a
special.
little bit, but you're right. Go for it.
Donna, I think, is great in this. We get a lot of hyper capable Donna, which is, I
Hmm.
think, good to have for her as a companion. I really love her scene with the Not Doctor, both because the Not Doctor not understanding how objects stay even when they're taken off is a really good, like, segue. But also, I
I
like
love
how
that.
Donna basically tricks him in a very Donna way of distracting him until he makes a mistake.
Yeah, Donna's very chatty here in this episode, but it's intentional, especially once we figure out what these guys are. I was going to talk about even before that, back before they realize that there's the imposters. There's the part where they're in the separate rooms, and there's some really good stuff about worrying how long her family will wait for her. Because, like, we didn't mention it that much, but I love Donna's family. Like, I love her husband, Sean, is really nice. Rose, we've mentioned the problems, but her mom is also, like, you get where her mom is coming from, and she's funny.
Her
I
mom
just
is
like the
definitely much better here than she was during the fourth season, where she was an oddly antagonistic figure.
I feel like they didn't want to do Rose's mom again was in season 4,
I feel like
where she's
honestly, Davies, at least in his initial run, just had a lot of mom issues. There's a lot of
mhm,
bad moms, or at the very least, like
mhm.
troubled moms in the Davies era.
Going back to the my arms are too long thing. I like that at first because you don't at first realize that the doctor isn't talking to her. And I'm like, oh, is this like the doctor saying like I'm this form again, but it's wrong? It was like a good like fake out moment with the monsters because he goes, my arms are too long. She's like, yeah, mine too. And I'm like, is he like, yeah, I'm this body, but it doesn't feel right.
I also feel like in that moment, it's a good switch up with the monsters because even though it's creepy, when they're first introduced, they're almost introduced as empathetic. Like they're trying
Hmm.
to relate to the people they're talking to. And you're sort of wondering,
Right.
are they actually bad guys or not? Before they go, full monster.
With their super long arms and then turning into animal form and trying to kill Marvin the robot from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes.
Yeah, I was making a lot of comparisons in my head. And I'm like the big round head, the small body reminded me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. One other thing, like there's the part where they keep getting split up, which is a reoccurring problem in these specials. The hallways. There's a weird comparison. It reminded me of the episode Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, where Amy, Rory, and the Doctor are stuck in the TARDIS hallways.
I think you're thinking of
The girl who waited, was it?
no, I think you're actually thinking of the doctor's wife.
It
Cause
might be.
cause Amy and Rory were gone by the time Journey to the Center of the TARDIS happened.
There was another episode where that's where we get old Amy, remember?
Oh, then yeah, that's the girl who waited.
Yeah, like the fact that like these hallways reminded me of like the really all the TARDIS hallways where they were kind of narrow and like you couldn't tell where you were going.
Mm.
And with the way that the ship kept shifting, it was a good way to keep people off balance. I think it worked better than when they get separated episode 3.
Yeah, with this episode, I feel like I have the least to say of all three because it's a solid monster story. If it were
It I
just like a Lost Doctor Donna episode, I think it would have fit perfectly in.
Yeah, again, like that was my thought. Like this just feels like an episode that you could slide into season 4. And aside from the fact that the actors look a little older, like, no, this fits. Like, again, Midnight was my big comparison. It's like it's that same kind of thing where I'm like, Davies, your comedy is hit or miss. This is pretty good horror.
Yeah, Davies, I kind of wish you would go dark more often. Your lighthearted stuff is not always so great.
The doctor.
Oh,
Oh, you go first.
I was just gonna say we gotta talk about Bernard Cribbins. Will.
Yes, I that was exactly where I was going. I'm like, it ends the episode and Wilf is there, and I was so happy.
Yes, Wilf is there. This has to be Wilf's last televised. So the actor Bernard Cribbins, fans of the podcast will also know that he was in the second of the Daleks movies as the not Ian. But this I think has
Forgot
to
about
have
not
been.
Ian.
But yeah, he was in that, and he has been a recurring side character in the Donna Noble era. He
Very
is
beloved. Like people love him.
yeah, I love him. He's great. One of my
Mm.
favorite things from the Davies era. And this has to be the last thing that he recorded before he died. So it was really nice to see him. I honestly, legitimately did not know he was coming.
I think you had told me that he was there, and I'm like, that's fine. I'm happy. He is technically in the beginning of the next episode, I will say.
Wilf is, Bernard Cribbins isn't.
Oh,
Yeah, if
I
you look
see.
closely, that is not Bernard Cribbins in that shot, and it is very apparent.
Okay. So with that, do we want to go into the giggle?
Yeah, you mind if I sum up?
Of course, yeah.
Episode 3, The Giggle. The Doctor and Donna return to Earth to discover that everyone is really anxious and angry and lashing out at each other for reasons. They are picked up by Unit, who whisk Wilf away to safety because he could not film in this episode.
It's
Um,
okay. They're going to Avengers Tower.
yes, they go to the new Unit base. We discover another companion, Melanie Bush, has been inducted into Unit. I have thoughts on that. We'll get to that. Oh God, what's her name? The Brigadier's daughter.
Kate Stewart.
Yes, Kate Stewart. She's back. Love to see her. She explains that some broadcast is making everyone go crazy. It turns out that the broadcast was implanted back in one of the earliest televised broadcasts of all time of this
Hmm.
puppet thing being burned under lights. It is the titular giggle because it planted a little like Woody Woodpecker
Hmm.
thing that's driving everyone nuts, but they've developed special bracelets to fight against it because they have an alien sidekick helper person. Don't know where he came from, does not matter. The
Okay, I was going to
doctor,
ask about that.
we'll cover that, I guess, but I have no idea. The doctor goes off investigating, almost immediately discovers that this is all a plot of the Toymaker, a first Doctor villain from back in the 60s. Then they go into a haunted house for a while. The Celestial Toymaker taunts the Doctor about like all the people that he let die. And then they go back to Avengers Tower to play a game because that's what the Toymaker does. The Toymaker does a little song and dance, kills the Doctor. The Doctor's about to regenerate, but no, it turns out he's bi-generating, which causes the 15th Doctor to be yanked out of him like a fruit roll-up.
Yep. And then they
Uh,
play catch.
then they play catch. The Doctors win. The toy maker folds up into a box for some reason. The toy maker drops a tooth that is also the master. The tooth that is also the master gets picked up because reference. The
Hmm.
14th Doctor decides that he's gonna stay on Earth because he apparently needs an extended vacation.
Hmm.
And also, just to make sure that he isn't like, really fidgety, he smacks the TARDIS with a hammer and produces a second TARDIS, which is a thing that has happened.
Oh boy.
Anyway, the 15th Doctor goes off to have adventures, and that's the end. I have thoughts.
All right, so I'm gonna say it. This was the last of the Time Lords.
Yep. Yes, it was.
Like, for those who don't know, Davies, when the show came back in 2005, did the first 4 seasons and then did 3 specials. The third season involved the return of the Master.
Yes.
And there's a lot of comparisons here, including a over-the-top dance number, this time to Spice Up Your Life by the Spice Girls.
Yep.
And yeah, so and I'm like, I throughout this, I was just like, oh my god, it's this again. It even has, as it's very described by the fan base, magical fairy doctor in that the doctor becomes two people but via a ray gun.
Yep. And look, there's no two ways around it. Neil Patrick Harris's take on the Celestial Toymaker is extremely similar to how John Sims played the Master in the Tennant era. It's
And
it's
I'll say this, there are times when it works.
I like it better here than with the Master. A
Hmm.
part of me was like, this is not how the Celestial Toymaker is, but I realized at some point that that was actually a stupid criticism for two reasons. One, the Toymaker is a lost episode, so I can take guesses at how it was performed based on the audio and stills, but I don't really know. And two, this is Doctor Who. Everyone has done their own take on any character that comes back. That's just part of the thing.
I'll also say they specifically called just the toy maker, and I looked into this. Apparently, the celestial part of it was a slur against Chinese back in the day.
Yeah, yes, it was.
So I've been
Incidentally,
just sticking with the toy maker.
you know what? Fair enough. I will try and drop the Celestial. I'm just an old head who knows the name. I
So
will say also the costume that the toy maker originally wore was extremely Chinese-ophobic. Like he wore one of
yeah.
those robes with the little hat. So this redux was probably well called for. I do have a big complaint when it comes to the toy maker, though. What exactly is the toy maker's goal?
Okay, I actually have an answer for this, and you're probably going to disagree, but hear me out because he kind of explains this. The toy maker's gimmick, at least in this, is that he wants to mess with people, play games, and like he explains this when they're on what I keep calling Avengers Tower because look at it, it's Avengers Tower,
Very
and he
similar.
goes and he says, "I have fallen in love with Earth. There are so many games to mess with." He even talks about it. It seems to imply that like he kind of wants to play video games. Like he
It
talks about
does seem
dating
to
sims
imply
and
that.
he talks about how like talks about dating sims and shooters and stuff. And I'm like, huh. And I guess that to someone who's like, I am a guy obsessed with all the games in life. Here's the people I usually use to play games. This is their games.
All right, so here's the thing. I can accept that. And I think
Mm-hmm,
that even fits in with the original story because the idea is not just that he likes games and play, but that he creates his entire domain around the idea of play. So the idea that he's taking Earth as his new domain would be
mm-hmm.
interesting. Here's my question. What does any of that have to do with the haunted house of the doctor's past trauma?
Okay, I actually I can pull something out here. Give me a second. This is a toy maker who remember this is obviously post their first encounter. And
Yes.
if I understand correctly, the doctor beat him in a game because they
Yes, he
have their
did.
second game. They have their second game where the toy maker wins, and now the doctor's like, "Okay, I lost, but now it's best 2 out of 3." I think he's really pissed at the doctor, and he wants to torment him.
I guess that's fair. I feel like his method there, the haunted house sequence doesn't really work for me, if I'm being honest. It doesn't feel in line with the way he is portrayed outside of it or the motivations he's bringing to the game. It feels very much like Davies is using him as a tool to try and meta commentate on who the doctor is in this time.
I will say the one like the haunted house was silly because again it goes Scooby Doo door at one point, but I and then there is the funny part where Donna beats up the family of puppets, which I thought was actually
Yeah,
pretty funny.
Donna
But
is
I was
attacked
gonna
by
say,
baby
okay,
dolls.
yes, and the mom because the puppet that was burned was the father.
Yes.
But we get to the puppet show, which is the big thing, and they list all the companions up to a point because apparently they didn't want to talk about the 13th companions and everything that went wrong with them. And the toy maker's like, well, this happened to this one. And then the doctor's like, well, this happened. And he's like, well, obviously that means it's okay then. And
Well,
it's
here's the thing. The reason he
pretty.
doesn't bring up the 13th Doctor's companions is because none of them died or pseudo died in the way that the
Mm,
Moffat companions did. So it's like, and then they
yeah.
died, and the doctor's like, well, but technically there was this reason that they technically didn't die if you look at it from a certain point of view. And in a
Yeah.
weird way, the toy maker's kind of going like, yeah, that's bullshit. Um,
Yeah. It's because Neil Patrick Harris drops his like German accent and goes full American. He's like, well, I guess that's okay then.
well, that's all right then.
Yeah.
I was by and large a lot more okay with the toy maker the more I thought about him. When I first watched him, I found him annoying more than anything else. I think I've come around to really liking him.
Yeah. Like, here's the thing. If nothing else, Neil Patrick Harris is having a ball.
Yes, he is. He's having a lot of fun. By the end of the special,
So,
there is no scenery left for the other actors. He has chewed it all.
yeah. And speaking of that, I think maybe we should go into the rest of the cast for this. Should we start
Um,
with
one
Mel just to get her out of the way?
one quick thing I want to say before this. I tried to avoid like reading other people's reviews of this or stuff, but I did hear production notes on this. And apparently
Oh.
Davies' initial concept for this episode was that the puppet was going to be the bad guy, not the toy maker. The concept being
Hmm.
that the puppet, which had been burned alive but immortalized in TV, wanted to steal the doctor's regenerations to become like a real boy and go Pinocchio on it.
I wonder if maybe they didn't want to do that because there was already such a similar plot in wasn't that kind of what the master was trying to do in Fluff?
Sorta, kinda.
I
But
maybe that's
also
why he changed his mind.
the reason Davies gave was The puppet just didn't seem very intimidating.
I mean, I've read Goosebumps books, so I'm used to Night of the Living Puppet kind of stuff. And I mean, puppets can be intimidating. There was that horror movie
Hmm.
Annabelle or whatever.
Yeah,
There, I think it could have worked, but yeah. But yeah,
I
the
think
toy
this
maker was
works
fine.
fine.
Yeah, no, the toy maker, and I like that they kind of just he folds up. That was kind of fun.
Mm. I have thoughts on that because if I'm being honest, the ending is kind of one of my big problems with the special.
Yeah.
I really don't like how it ends.
And I'll say this, another thing that made me think of the last of the Time Lords is like the 14th Doctor's last play before he gets shot is you and me across the stars. That reminds me when he was trying to like get the Master to stop. Oh, we should talk about the Master, shouldn't we?
Yeah, so the toy maker starts gloating about all of these Doctor Who villains that he has beaten. One of the ones that I call absolute bullshit on is he claims that he defeated all of the Guardians of Space and Time and turned them into playing cards, which, like, fuck you. No, you
Yeah, no,
didn't.
no.
That did not happen, toy maker. Fuck off. You are not.
Yeah.
They are gods. You did not beat them. Fuck you.
They kind of
Um,
present the toy maker as a god in this, to be fair. He's very Q from Star Trek.
Oh, he's extremely cute. He's always been very cute. Even
Okay.
if you go back to the original episode, there's a lot of Q energy off of him.
Okay.
He's just not quite so manic.
Oh boy.
Uh, but like the Guardians are heavily implied to be like the greatest power in the universe.
Mm.
So that's imagine if Q was like, I took the wormhole aliens and I ate them. You would call bullshit.
Probably. But yeah, the Master.
But one of the things that he says is that he defeated the master and turned him into a gold tooth that at the end is then picked up by a woman's hand because third season reference.
So we've talked about this off screen. You really like the current like the at the time current Master actor Sasha Dewan, I think it was.
Sasha Dewan, who played the master in the Jodie Whittaker era, is my favorite of the new Who masters and probably my second favorite overall master so far.
Like
Really liked him.
I'll joke all the time about the John Sims Master, but he was very silly.
I
And
didn't like the John Sims master. I have made that very clear.
so with this, do you think this is them planning to introduce a new Master?
Probably, in which case, the only thing I'll say is, Russell, you don't need to keep explaining how the master survives these like near-death experiences. Coming back from them has always been the master's shtick.
Yeah, just the problem is like in the modern era of TV, everything needs to be explained. Hey, Josh, how many Star Wars shows have had to explain how Palpatine came back
I
somehow?
never I never thought I'd say this, but guys, you can just Rise of Skywalker this. Somehow the master's returned. It's okay. We'll roll with it.
But yeah, so yeah, the Master. This was obviously like because was the I'll ask because I know we're not talking about Flux that much. Was the Master defeated in Flux?
So the Master wasn't defeated in Flux, but he was defeated in Jodie's final episode.
Okay, that's all. We don't need to go into it. I just wanted to check about that. It's a shame because you have talked up Sasha Dewana a lot, and I am going to eventually get an account and watch all the stuff I missed. I know you say skip them off and stuff, but I want to catch everything I missed.
Fair
And
enough.
I'm excited to get to Sasha Dewan's Master because what you've described from him, I'm like, oh, this is perfect for the Doctor Jodie Whittaker is.
He is probably the most intimidating of the Masters I have found. He just gives off a very scary energy.
All right, so should we talk about Mel now?
The
The
former companion.
Yeah, because
Yes.
you said you had thoughts about this. Because I don't know Mel very much. She was the a sixth Doctor companion.
Yeah, Mel was the sixth Doctor companion. She is famously the sixth Doctor companion with no origin episode.
Oh,
Because she came on during Trial of a Time Lord, and like Trial of a Time Lord was a mess.
yeah, that's a whole thing. The
Um,
Spider-Man clone saga of Doctor Who.
so she when she went into the seventh Doctor era at the end of season 24, I'm pretty sure it was, she runs off with basically this like how to explain this character?
Was this the Brian Blessed character?
No, 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 no. The Brian Blessed character was someone completely different. This was like we've talked about Star Wars. Picture Hondo.
Okay.
I think it's Hondo. Hondo's
The
the
pirate.
pirate. Yeah,
Okay, interesting.
but he's like also this drunk.
Yeah, they kind of that was implied with what when she said how he died.
Yeah, he was like this strange, sort of scummy, con artist type guy who was still oddly lovable in a way.
Okay, I can see the Hondo comparisons then. Yeah.
And she basically runs off with him and goes flying across the stars. I'll be honest, I don't buy her as a unit agent because Mel's primary characteristics were that she was sort of a twit,
Like an
frankly.
idiot.
Kinda, yeah. She was this she was a very comedy centric character.
Hmm.
She is when people describe the screamers, aka the companions who mostly scream a lot, they usually think of Mel.
Gotcha. Okay.
And her one of her big things was that she was a fitness obsessed person.
Okay. So yeah, I can see how her being now like this tech lady at unit is a little weird.
It is a little weird. Also, weirdly enough, I kind of preferred the idea of her just going off with this strange space guy to explore the stars and like leaving it at that. This feels more like a downgrade for Mel in a
Yeah,
way.
this isn't like Ace joining unit, which makes way more sense, kind of thing.
Yeah, and even that I thought was a downgrade, frankly.
Yeah, but it was better than what you told me they originally wrote for her.
Yes, it was, but we're not getting into that.
Exactly. All right, so that's Mel.
The only
Um,
thing I will say is the actress coming back to play Mel, I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but did enjoy her. She
yeah,
was good to see again.
it's always nice when the Doctor gets to meet the classic companions, and like you see on his face, like, oh, it's you. It's so good to see you, and I'm like, that's cute. It's always
Yes.
cute when they get to do that. Like again, it tugs at the heartstrings even when you don't know it. Like again, I got that when I got the Sarah Jane adventure back in the second season,
Yeah, yeah.
which is still one of the best
Um
episodes, non-horror episodes of the Davies era school
yes.
reunion.
And was written by I believe Toby Whithouse, who in my opinion is the best of the new Who writers.
Oh, there is something I want to mention going back to the toy maker. I'm looking through my notes, and this is again feels like okay, we're setting up what's going to be coming in the Davies run. He mentions the one person he was scared of, the one who waits. Do you have any idea of what that could be?
I don't think we're really meant to know who that is yet. I think that's setting up for a thing. I'm honestly not sure who that could mean. It could mean a lot of different people.
Do you think it's whoever Beep the Meep was working for?
Could be. Could be that's what they were setting up.
Yeah, because it feels again I've talked about this throughout the special, but yeah, it's very obviously setting up stuff for his show.
If I were to take some completely blind shots in the dark as to who I think it would be, there are a few names that stand out. One
Hmm.
would be Omega,
I was gonna say, oh my god,
because Omega, for the record, is a Time Lord, well, a proto Time Lord who got trapped in a dimension of antimatter. So arguably, he is the one who waits in this other dimension.
and he's basically a Time Lord god in a way, right?
Yeah, basically. Him
To
and
summarize,
Raslan.
yeah, him and Rascal are basically the two Time Lord gods. I was thinking Omega 2 with my limited knowledge of the series, but I'm like, yeah, that would make sense.
I would say Rassilon himself, except Davies
And
ruined Rassilon, so
again, like, it would be a good thing because Davies has, they've played around with Rassilon a lot in the modern show. We haven't seen much of Omega.
well, that's because Omega kind of died in the third Doctor era, but this is Doctor Who, that means nothing.
The Masters of Tooth, they could bring Omega back.
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
Um,
I just wanted to ask about that.
so I think that that's gonna be my like big guess as to who the one who waits is.
Unless it's someone all new altogether, but who knows?
Could be. Maybe it's Amy. Who knows?
Oh my god, if it's Amy, I'd be so upset. Although it'd be funny if she just comes back in her pirate outfit. I'm coming for you, toy maker.
Actually, you know it would be funny if it was the old Amy.
Oh my god. Yeah, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's stay on track. Uh, there's something we haven't talked about with this episode outside of the characters. Is Davies criticizing television on his episode of Doctor Who?
So this isn't
Because
wouldn't be the first time that his era criticized television.
Yeah, then we'll also talk about the Zvex scene.
I will say I have a different theory as to what the giggle is. I think it's fascism.
Ooh, okay.
And I think it's more a comment on how the speed at which news has moved at and that it can be altered by whoever has an agenda helps the spread of fascism and this sort of polarizing nature to politics based
I
on
could,
what it does to people.
yeah. Then there's some obviously like satire here. Like the thing they use to restrain the giggle is the Z-Dex, and they try to give it to people, and they're like, I can't do this. It's restraining me, and which is obviously like a satire on people not wanting to wear masks or get vaccinated.
Yeah. So
Which is
again,
funny because we were talking about this right before you watched this episode.
yeah, yeah, we were. I will say another major complaint I have with this episode. In the opening, we get this big, like, introduction to the giggle and its effects and the dangers of it and all that stuff. And then for the rest of the episode, it's basically just gone. Like, it's still happening, but it's so background, it doesn't feel like it's part of the episode
It
anymore.
goes for in a way, it almost feels like this is just the toy maker getting the doctor's attention.
And I feel like there was a lost opportunity. So I'm
Okay,
going to do something now that I probably shouldn't, but I must.
okay.
I'm going to compliment the Slitheen two-parter in season one.
Oh no.
So one of the things that they do that I like is because Jackie and Mickey are out on the streets, when the Slotheens start like enacting their plan and put an attack out, there's actual terror for the characters we care about.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish that we had cut to like Donna's family in the middle of
Yeah.
all of this to see how they were dealing with it.
Maybe even just like unit trying to help like calm people down, get them off because there's that one guy, one of the examples they show of like the way the toy maker explains is I made everyone think they're right. And one of the ways they show this is this guy jumps in front of a car, the doctor stops him, he's like, I use my tax money for these roads, so I own these roads, so I should be able to walk wherever I want. And I feel like
Yes.
more of like seeing people trying to stop that stuff would have been maybe helped.
Yeah, because right now it's just kind of a nothing to the story.
We find out about the satellite and they pull out their super awesome mega laser and shoot it out of space.
Yeah. And like once the toy maker is officially introduced in the story, it becomes more about like the toy maker is wreaking havoc, we must stop him rather than any grand plan the toy maker has.
Let's get back to the characters. Do we have anything particularly we want to talk about with Donna in this episode?
Not
She's Donna.
really. She just doesn't have much to do.
She has more at the end, and I feel like we have to talk about the Doctor first if we want to talk about what she does at the end.
Yeah, probably true. I will just say it's nice to have Kate back.
Oh yeah, especially because the way you described him, like, oh man, I hope Kate comes back. And Kate, I like Kate a lot.
Yeah,
Again,
she's a good character.
in the same way the Brigadier is kind of that. It's nice that the Doctor basically has his Nick Fury.
But yeah, we should talk about the Doctor. Man, I don't like what they do with him in this special.
Okay, let me play the devil's advocate. Okay,
Okay.
I don't like the bi-generation thing either.
Mm-hmm.
I will be okay if they show restraint and don't use Tennant ever again, or hold off for a long time.
Yeah.
The second TARDIS was my problem.
Oh yeah. No, I hate that.
So the Doctor loses the card game, and he says best 2 out of 3. The toy maker has this crazy spice up your life sequence, and then he takes over the laser, and the Doctor's like, "This is between you and me. Let's play our last game." And he's like, well, I played the first game with the older Doctor, and I played the second game with this one. So we'll play the final game with with the next Doctor. And he shoots the David Tennant through the chest, and he starts regenerating. And Mel and Donna are both there with him, which I like. That part I like. I like that it's like, well, yeah, these are the people that travel with the Doctor. They're not going to let him be alone this time. Because, especially with David Tennant, his first regeneration was alone, and it's kind of infamous. It's a better regeneration than I Don't Want to Go, up until the moment where things get weird.
It's no longer a sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's just magically. Also, like this needs to be said.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the meta crisis Doctor again.
Yeah, it is. I have many questions about this, but let me get back to what I was talking.
Okay.
Because we talked about this a bit throughout the episodes. And They bring this up near the end. First, right off the bat, we get the new Doctor. What's his actor's name? God damn it.
So I looked it up. His name is pronounced Shuti Gatwa.
Shooty Gatwa, I love him. He's great. Right off the bat, like he comes in and he's fantastic.
He's pretty good. I have a couple issues with him, but I don't think it's with the performance or even how it's written. It's how he's used in the special.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it still feels like we're following David Tennant and not him.
Yeah. And because of that, he ends up becoming a support character for David Tennant rather than getting to show off who he is as the Doctor, which is
Yes.
my issue.
Okay, so here's where I think this can work. Like they describe this at the end when they're trying to figure out how this is all going to work. One of their theories is he turned back into David Tennant because he's fucking exhausted. He's worn himself out over at the Flux, the Time War. They reference all the other bad things that have happened. They both mention Adric as one thing.
Yeah, I will say I feel like putting this idea that the Doctor never stopped running or took a rest since he started in the first Doctor feels like bullshit.
I mean,
Like there
I'll
are
say
gaps.
from where I watched, I mean, there's the whole time in season 6 where spoilers for those who haven't watched season 6. Like the Doctor knows he's going to die, so he spends 200 years vacationing.
Yeah, and that's just new Who. If you go back to
Yeah.
classic Who, like the Doctor fucked around in Rome for 6 months doing nothing.
Okay,
The man's taking breaks.
but let me again, devil's advocate. You can take a vacation and still come back to what you're doing and be exhausted and dead to it. Like I've taken a week off of work and come back and I'm like, I still feel like crap.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And if what I'm thinking is correct, the 15th Doctor is finally letting it all go. He's finally moving on, and the 14th Doctor, the way the 15th Doctor explains is, we're Time Lords. We did therapy in reverse. He is now the Doctor removed from all that finally, and now David Tennant can just heal the proper way. And I hate this because it also feels like, yeah, well, he's not the Doctor. He almost feels like the child of the Doctor who is spared from the sins of the father kind of thing.
Well, I also just like a huge thing about the Doctor is he takes his past with him. That's one of the things that it's interesting seeing how later Doctors handle the stuff that they, did before.
And I think that that isn't not there, but I think he's let go of the guilt. I think that's what they're going for. The guilt of the Time
Yeah,
War, the guilt of the Flux, what's happened to each of the companions. It's not a hard reset because he hasn't forgotten anything. This is still the Doctor. This is him just like, we need to move on from this. And if I had to shed all of that part of me into you, then fine.
fair enough.
It's
I
I still don't like that David Tennant is still around. I'm not going to disagree with you that. I hate that because again, I will take all of my compliments away if in the next season we have an episode with him teaming up with David Tennant.
I have a suspicion
Mm-hmm.
that the finale of the next season is going to be him teaming up with David Tennant. And my theory is they might kill off David Tennant, like actually kill him off.
I don't think they'll do it. I don't think they want to upset the fan, like the
Could be.
the majority fans, because obviously
Yeah.
we are annoyed by this, but a lot of people are like, yeah, my Doctor is back because
And not
as
only
much
that,
as
my Doctor gets to carry on forever. I can write all the fan fiction I want.
and I'll be honest, I did like the scene of him with like the Noble family at the end. That was fun, even if
Eh,
it's a little saccharine. I wish we had gotten more with. Sorry, how do you pronounce the new guy's name again?
Shuti Gatwa.
With Shooty Gatwa. I would
I will just say, incidentally, if I am wrong and his name is not pronounced Shuti Gatwa, let me know in the comments. Be
yeah,
very mean and engage as much as possible.
ring the bell, like that subscribe button. But we were talking about like when you first watched this, you were like we talk in Discord a lot, and you had mentioned, oh, this regeneration's happening sooner than I thought, and I appreciate that we got more than like the last 30 seconds of the episode. We got like 15 minutes of this new Doctor. He is interacting with David Tennant as the background, but we get a feel for him. He's very like jovial and like he's very positive. That's what I'm saying. Like this is a Doctor who's healed. David Tennant still needs the healing, but he is healed.
That is true.
He's
There's
also kind of heavily implied to be gay or bisexual. He's using a lot of like Bay terms, like he's love and he's kissing guys. I don't know if that was just me.
Well, this is again, I might be wrong on this, but Ncuti Gatwa, I think, is the first openly gay actor to play the Doctor, and I'm not sure if leaning into that is a good move for representation or if it's stereotyping the Doctor before he's even had a chance to really like
Fair.
work. I don't
But
know.
I like him so far, not counting the Timeless Child, I believe, first African European doctor,
He
first
is the
first black doctor.
he's the first numbered Black Doctor, I will say.
Okay, yeah. Again, I haven't watched Timeless Child, so I don't know about all that. And then there's all the other stuff I don't know about.
When you get to Fugitive of the Jadoon, call me.
Okay. Again, like first impressions of him, I like, which is not always guaranteed because like people were iffy about Capaldi.
They were I was kind of iffy about Capaldi when he first showed up.
Yeah, like the only iffy part was the fact that Tennant was still there.
Yeah, I will say that in regards to him hanging out with the family, again, my big problem is just we don't spend enough time with the family for me to get a feel for their personalities. Like Rose is there, and once again, she's just a void. She is a stick figure where a person sits.
He's a positive representation, but not much else.
Yeah,
There are things to look into. Like she is making these stuffed animals because Donna gave away the money. They're kind of low on cash, and she's trying to support her family in her own way. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but that's also kind of it.
I really wish she had become the new companion.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that would have given a lot more space for her to grow. It would have given us a more direct connection to the past that we could perhaps use to explore new angles in Doctor Who. I feel like we really missed an opportunity there.
yeah. Because that's what I thought when they first were announcing these specials. I'm like, I mean, we've talked about this. You and me were both like, David Tennant's back, what? And then, but
I
then they're
was
like,
pissed off.
and then also here's his companion Rose, and we're like, um, okay. But I will say, okay, despite a lot of our problems with these specials, I feel like your main fear and what I was sharing with you was that they were just going to try to ignore everything that had come before this, after Davies' first era. And no, everything is still intact.
Yes, and I do appreciate that.
I've talked with you. I've recently gone back into comics, so I know the idea of like, well, this run is over. Now we're just going to ignore that it happened, and that did not happen here. Like the doctor's like, well, then I was an old guy, then I was Irish, then I was a woman, Scottish, then I was a woman, and now
Yeah,
I'm this again. And then they also the flux is a big plot point, and all this stuff.
couldn't we have just let this David Tennant be Scottish? Let him use his
No,
accent, Davies.
no. If this is the last we see of Tennant, I'll be okay. Even if they use him in the finale, I'll be like, but okay. But the TARDIS to me is the bigger problem than him being around.
Yeah, because being able to make another TARDIS this easily is breaking for the whole show.
That wasn't my problem because they explained like, okay, there's a remainder of the toy maker's like domain, godly domain. It's the fact that this means that David Tennant can still go on adventures normally. That was my
Yeah.
problem.
Okay, I want to talk about a minor nitpick that I think indicates my big problem with this entire finale.
Mm-hmm.
The ball game fucking sucks. It's okay, let me explain. Let me explain. They introduced the concept of the ball game, which is
Mm-hmm.
just we're going to pass the ball around and first one to drop it loses. And then they do that and then it just ends. There's no angle to it. There's nothing sacrificed. There's no clever bit that the doctors pull to win. They just win the game, and that's it. And I feel like that's kind of my problem with this entire finale is everything just kind of works out. The doctor regenerates, but he doesn't actually regenerate. He bigenerates. So the new doctor gets to go off and we get to keep the old doctor. The doctor is stuck on Earth, but not really. He has the TARDIS. He can go whenever he wants. The doctor is once again alone, but not really, because he's got a family. The new guy is now free of all the problems of the old guy and doesn't have to worry about it. The toy maker's just defeated and in a box, and everything's just running smooth. It feels like things kind of just sort themselves out.
All right, I get that. I'm going to say a few things about the ball game, and then I think since it sounds like we're getting into final thoughts, I'll get into that too. Two things about the ball game. First of all, I did like that the ball game is actually set up very early on because the toy maker throughout the episodes he's like talking about the history of games. Like the first game was the ball, and then there was the hide and seek. And I like that did come back in the end as like, yeah, catch is the first game in all of history.
I don't mind that it's a game of catch that they defeat at, but I feel like there needs to be a twist.
That's where I come because hey Josh, have you heard of this thing called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
I think I have heard of it, yes.
For those who don't know, JoJo is a series. It's an anime about usually this bloodline of family called the Joestars at dealing with weird supernatural stuff throughout time. And in the sixth part, it's following the first female lead, Jolene, and people in them have psychic powers basically. And one of the challenges at one point is a life or death ball catching game where they're running through a prison playing catch. And I'm like, ah, yes, Rusty Davis, I too have seen that fight. And it literally is whoever drops the ball, or I think in that game it was like if you hold the ball for longer than 10 seconds, you lose. But it was also you have to keep passing it for like an hour. They had to like run through elevators. Like if that was the case, where like there's a moment where he grabs the ball and I thought he was gonna throw it straight down, and the doctors would have to like dive off the tower to catch it or something. Like I feel like the game
Hmm.
didn't go far enough. Like that's the twist I was thinking of. Like they were just playing ball, but like I thought the twist would be like, and now he starts throwing it at crazy angle. Like I'll throw it thousands of feet into the air, and now you have to try to catch it, or again throw it off the edge, and the doctor has to leap for it or something.
Also, like, the whole point of the Doctor as a character is that he's clever and he is a bit of a trickster figure. And so I'm waiting for the bit where the Doctor is able to pull some cheat
Mm-hmm.
out, and it never comes. There's never a point where the toy maker tries to cheat. There's never, they don't, it's exactly what you're saying. They just throw the ball around on this set for a while until the toy maker drops it.
I will say it is something they established because Donna tries to when the card game happens. Donna's like, he's obviously going to cheat, and they both look offended because it seems like one of the things the rules the toy maker has to follow is he's playing fair. Like obviously he's probably joke messing around, but like he was playing reasonably fair, so he couldn't cheat. Go.
I'm just gonna say, first of all, I have I wouldn't say I've seen the original episode because it's a lost episode, so I've more
Of
listened
course.
to it while pictures show up. But that is bullshit.
Yeah, but
He
they were.
cheated,
I was going to say,
but
but they're obviously trying to for this version. They're like, okay, he plays games, but he plays as fair as he's willing.
also like in that sense, you're expecting him to set up rules that will give him an edge. It's not cheating, it's establishing the game on the high ground.
You
And you expect the doctor then to find the loophole that twists it.
you know what I think would have made this work?
Mm,
He specifically said, "I am playing this game with the new Doctor." And yeah, if David hadn't played, but the new Doctor had to be the one to win because I don't remember who throws the ball that makes him miss.
I don't remember either.
But that would have been again a good way. Like, all right, and now this is the new Doctor coming into his own. He has to defeat the Toy Maker his on his own rather than the two Doctors working together on this.
We also have the toy maker in this special not cheating, but definitely playing in a way to try and use mind games.
Oh
Because
yeah,
he's in the middle of explaining a thing when he suddenly chucks the ball real hard at the doctor, clearly trying to catch him
yeah,
off guard.
but that's not cheating technically.
I know, but even that is more of a thing than the doctor does. The doctor is literally just playing catch.
Yeah.
You're waiting for there to be a thing, and there is nothing.
Do you have anything else for this episode?
I honestly, putting aside even just my canon issues and not liking by generation and all of that stuff, a lot of it I think just feels too much like filler.
I the moment I started watching it, and it's again, especially the dance sequence, I'm like, oh, this is the last of the Time Lords, and that is a kind of a notorious season finale. It's not the worst. It's not the end of time, but it's but just like again, in my head, I wasn't hearing Spice Up Your Life. I was hearing, I can't decide whether you should live or die. And I was,
Incidentally, I know that there are a lot of Last of the Time Lord and End of Time fans who are going to be watching this going, what do they not like about it? It's great.
here's the thing for anyone who watches it, is that I think John Sims is hilarious, but I also mess with Josh a lot talking about it the same way I mess with him with the way he likes the Amazing Spider-Man 2, the way I like it. I mean, in that it's pretty bad, but I enjoyed it anyway.
I'm just going to say for anyone listening to this, John Sims sucks. His master sucks. I
I
don't
need
like it.
I need to see the episode with him and Missy because I feel like that might have been a chance for him to do something better.
I mean, in that one, he's not doing his usual thing, but he's also just not much of a character, if I'm being
Okay.
honest.
It feels like Davies likes doing these very over the top villains.
Davies, I think, really likes camp, and sometimes
Yeah,
that works, and sometimes it's just annoying.
because we talked about this. There are parts of these specials when they're trying to be funny, and they are. Like there are
Yes,
funny parts of this. Sometimes it falls flat, but I think for me personally, most of these hit more than they miss. The second episode's the best, but again, my big problem is how bad the CG is for most of it. This
it's
one,
really bad. It's really
this
bad.
one looks better. Like I think most of the stuff in this looks better than that, but the writing isn't as good. And then the first one is kind of has a little bit of both. So I feel like it goes obviously the Wild Beyonder's the best
Yeah, I think we
for most
both
of it.
agree on that.
And then I keep bouncing back and forth because I think I like the giggle clearly more than you because I know you don't I don't know if you hate this, but it's clearly your least favorite. And I
I
can't.
I I will just say I don't hate it. I just I don't like it very much.
Yeah.
Would be my way of putting it.
I'll say my final thoughts are if they show restraint with David Tennant, I will be okay with the giggle.
Okay.
That's what I'll say. If they keep shoving him into the show again because we have him, then I'll be like, okay, you guys screwed up.
Yeah. And I guess in your sense, then the Star Beast is the weakest link for you.
The bi-generation thing is for some reason it bothers me less than the ass pull of the Dr. Donna stuff. That it does because Time Lords are magic. Like let's just admit it. The Time Lords are magic, and then this the getting rid of the Dr. Donna stuff felt stupider to me
I can
because
see
it
where you're
also
coming
felt
from.
because it also feels kind of again they were trying to be both feminine positive and trans positive, but in a way they had to put men down, and I'm like that's not the way to do it. I don't think.
Well,
And
it
also
just
the doctor was just a woman.
yeah. I will say it feels femme positive and trans positive in a way that's very condescending, where it's like, yes, you can understand this because you are the special women with your emotional senses. Men just
Oh,
can't get it's
but then it's also saying men can't let go of things.
yeah, it's just which I guess in a way also fits with this larger theme of the doctor can't let go of his trauma.
Yeah, which in that way it works. So maybe it is better than I think, but it's just I just didn't like it. And the bi-generation thing is silly, but I just expect silly most of the time from Davies.
I just by generation just to me feels like we're taking the sacrifice out of regeneration. We're taking the thing that makes regeneration an emotional moment and not just a cheap plot thing.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I feel like they already did that a while ago when they got rid of the limit and when the meta crisis happened the first time.
Well, I didn't like it when the
Hell,
meta crisis happened the first time either.
yeah, when they decided the hand counted. when they decide
That
when
I
the
think actually made it better.
and hell, even when just bringing this all back to the beginning, when Jody regenerates into 14, when it's David Tennant again, I'm still like, it comes back to my big question: was bringing David Tennant back for these worth it?
I think in a sense, I think bringing David Tennant back was more of a marketing move than anything else.
Oh yeah, because
And I think they made a decent attempt at justifying it, but I don't think they ever really make it something where I'm like, yes, this had to happen.
it didn't have to happen, and I'm like, I'm trying to weigh the positives versus the negatives because the big positive is I am glad they fixed Anna. I'm glad they undid that. That was nice. I wouldn't mind if they did that for some more companions, the pawns. Let's bring it back to this is Daleks aren't robots. Should we rank each of them or rank them all together
Um,
out of Daleks?
let's rank them separately. Let's start with Wild Blue Yonder because I think we both agree that's the best one. I would give it 3.5 out of 4 Daleks.
That's where I was sitting. Oh, also, sorry, one last thing. Aside from the toy maker, no classic enemies, which was actually kind of nice. There were no Daleks, no Cybermen, no
Yep,
Sontarans. Beep the Meep is an adaptation, so I don't count that. But yeah, okay. Wild Blue Yonder 3.5.
the half for the CGI, which is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I'm gonna go to the Star Beast next.
Yeah,
I would give that a 2.5 out of 4 Daleks. It's got a lot of problems that bring it down, but I think the good parts. It's an episode that I feel like I could rewatch on its own and enjoy somewhat in a way that I don't think I can with the giggle.
I think I can agree with 2.5.
And the giggle, I'm gonna give a solid 2 Daleks because while I don't like it, I don't think it's actively bad or harmful to the show. I think it's just an
It's there.
episode that I don't care for.
I think the stuff I like about it out overall outweighs the stuff I don't. Again, I like the new Doctor. I think the toy maker, as over the top as he is fun to watch. I'm going to actually also give that a 2.5. I think in the end, I'm just like, yeah, Wild Blue Yonder is the best of the three, but Star Beast and the Giggle are pretty equal for me for different reasons.
I will also say both of us really like Wild Blue Yonder, and I think that is easily the least like continuity heavy of any of these. So,
Except when they're, I mean, nope, we're not getting into it. We're at the end.
yeah, no, okay. This was our Daleks Aren't Robots on the three specials. If you're in America, you can watch them on Disney Plus. If you're elsewhere, I believe BBC has their own player that you can watch them on. You can see us on YouTube, on Spotify. Hopefully, we'll be getting new episodes out on watching the proper series with everybody again real soon. Please come back. I'm really sorry. The hiatus has been longer than we expected. Anything you want to say, Sam, before we go?
Moffat did nothing wrong. Uh, Remember to feed your TARDISes and to change the oil on your Daleks.
Yep, yep. If you'll excuse me, I need to go kill Sam now. Goodbye.
Well, that's all right then.